Chapter 2 Universal Mechanics. As shown in the previous chapter, the model can be used for any particle or field. It shall therefore be used to briefly describe the ultimate field, that of existence itself, and to use that description as a foundation for a more detailed discussion on the applications of the model. Note, there seems to be some contradictions in the following paragraphs, which do not become clear until the section on time. The below is described in terms of linear time for sake of simplicity. However, there truly is no such time, as it is merely a phenomena resulting from the limitations of human consciousness, which will be addressed later. The universe is a set of all possible vibrations which vibrate in harmony, creating one perfect field of one solid tone, silence. It is a sea of perfectly organized energy in perfect balance and vibrating at this perfect frequency. All that is contained within this field and composed of this energy. All things that exist are localized imbalances of this perfect field, each being a vortex itself, similar to the nines on the ideal field model. It is proposed that the torus model is a two-way vortex in this field of silence, the center of the torus being simultaneously the entrance and exit of energy from this field of infinite potential, recursively mimicking the model to an infinitely small scale. The model is therefore of an anomaly in the field, one end ejecting energy in a vibration relative to the anomaly's properties, and the other end likewise harmonizing energy, returning it to silence. When the field of silence, the universe, is quote-unquote out of balance at any point, its frequency of vibration changes. This vibration, by its very nature, cannot exist in the field of silence, and it is ejected. However, since that field is the only field that exists, it ejects the energy to a specific part of itself which vibrates in harmony with some other aspect of itself, thus maintaining silence. However, a perceiver, observing only that one point, would observe, quote-unquote, sound, since the observer is not capable of observing the entire universe at the exact same time, else the perception would always be silence. This, quote-unquote, sound simply means any vibration other than silence. Therefore, all things come from this field, for all things are vibration. These vibrations are the friction of the motion of the one force flowing through the vortex, creating a specific frequency, or note, or chord. Each vortex having specific properties based on the 9 numbers. The strength of these properties is based on the relative size, amplitude, of the vortex and the symmetrical perfection thereof. These properties interact with each other as shown in image 19. The various vortices, when interacting with each other, literally create a symphony. A symphony is the measure of the compounded vibration of all units in a group. Therefore, all things are, to more or less complex degrees, symphonies of vortices. Furthermore, this union of vibrations forms a collective vortex as in image 12, uniting the group as one. The more perfect this assembly, the closer to image 11 this collective phantom vortex becomes. Think of a magnet as a balanced anomaly, a gate that cannot grow larger or smaller. Therefore, a flux continually circulates through it in the exact same proportions. It is thus a specific note. A magnet is our torus, as the early images show. Thus, the constituents of the atom are also magnets, which are tori, which are vortices, which are notes, which are anomalies in silence. Thus, string theory may merely be attempting to describe very tiny toroids whose vibration are notes in the titanic one song, una, one, verse, song, the universe. What then creates these anomalies? It is simply geometry. As previously stated, the universe is perfectly organized, which allows it to have a perfect vibration. no vibration can be efficiently transmitted through a medium, which is itself a vibration, that is not symmetrical. Therefore, symmetry is directly proportional to transmission efficiency. The highest degree of symmetry is the ultimate balance of the universe as a whole. Therefore, energy flows through it perfectly, yet so perfectly that nothing can be differentiated. Any less symmetrical material, even the most advanced and symmetrical material made by man, will lack some degree of efficiency. Not to mention the fact that the material would have to evenly cover the entire universe to achieve ultimate perfection. Thus, some friction will be present in all works less than the perfect one. This most symmetrical form is expressed by the ideal field model, as it cycles through itself in infinite recursion without deviation on any level of magnitude. Whenever sufficient symmetry is present in some part of the universe, it momentarily mimics the architecture of silence as a recursive harmonic reflection, and thus, quote unquote, the energy flows through it with an efficiency directly related to how closely it has mimicked perfection. This conduit, vortex, then affects the surrounding environment, which is simply a panorama of vibration, according to the 9 properties of the ideal field model. As an illustration, say a part of the universe on a microscopic scale, for whatever reason, natural or man-made, happens to mimic a part of silence. Suddenly, an infinitely tiny vortex manifests, a string, allowing energy to flow forth from silence, which affects surrounding vibrations accordingly, possibly even causing more symmetrical geometries in the environment, thereby initiating other vortices. These other vortices may be in the right position to interact with each other. The flow of energy from the first vortex may be balanced enough to fortify its structure, so that when it comes into contact with another, they do not meld together. Instead, they form a dynamic interaction, such as image 12. This is the origin of the compound particle, such as an atom. This particle then, also acting as a vortex, continues the same progression of interaction, ultimately forming the entire material universe. It is the nature of this force to thus generate complex systems with each of their individual parts, from atoms to galaxies, all attempting to mimic perfection, striving to grow into a more symmetrical form. All of this happens by the same simple recursive mechanism of the ideal field model, compounding infinite pieces into infinite variety. The ideal field model is thus the universe whose infinite pieces act exactly as itself. Thus, all matter are vortices, which are simply the initial energy bound into self-similar feedback loops. Before continuing to the next chapter, here is a brief summary of the key points thus far. 0. First, there is nothing but one sea of the one and only energy in perfect balance, thus indistinguishable from any other aspect of itself. It therefore seems to be a silent void. All is made of this energy. For this document, this energy from here on will be called zero-point energy, or ZP. 1. The totality of number 0 is simultaneously at rest and silent, as well as in dynamic movement and incredibly loud, emitting every possible sound. The human mind cannot fully fathom this, and ultimately only perceives limited parts of the system, never able to perceive the totality and comprehend how such noise balances into silence. Therefore, it appears as if there should be a beginning, even though it is a birthless and deathless system beyond the realm of time. Time is a phenomena of the limited human consciousness, which analyzes each independent space-time event with varying degrees of intensity in specific sequences. However, all events already pre-exist in the silence, otherwise it would not be one and only one, for infinity is equal to 1 because there is only one infinity. 2. Assuming number 0 and number 1 are true, even though all phenomena had always existed, being limited humans, The mechanics must be analyzed from this limited point of view of linear sequences. Therefore, two worlds must be addressed. A, the world of zero, which is a perfect sea of the purest energy, the one energy, the 0 point energy, or the lumiferious ether. This world is beyond the bounds of human comprehension in its titanic vastness, and is perfect silence. B, the world of phenomena, or world of matter. This is the limited view of things perceived by the limited human consciousness, which tends to see things as separate, when in all truth, separateness is an impossibility, else one does not have one unit as shown in number 1. This world is the noise perceived when unable to perceive the whole. Thus, time exists here, which is a direct result of separation. For to perceive separation, things must be compared to other things, which then gives rise to sequence. Therefore, all phenomena in this paper shall be discussed in sequences and in relation to other quote-unquote separate phenomena. 1. The basic linear cycle. 0. Being that there is no beginning and no end, just one perpetual cycle, the cause of any point is therefore, paradoxically, pre-existing stresses. Thus it can be true that any manifestation could be the very first event ever, as the following sequence is a perpetually recursive cycle, no different than the first link in a circular chain. 1. Localized activity in the world of phenomena creates conditions favorable for the formation of a vortex, possibly incredibly small, possibly called by some strings or by others gravitons. 2. The specific nature of this vortex interacts with the specific nature of pre-existing forces, other vortices, catalyzing new events, and eventually leading again to step 1. A vortex may grow by attracting and or combining with other vortices, or be dissolved by them, both explained in detail later. Therefore, all things are made of bound 0-point energy, whose mechanics follow the ideal field model. 2. The basic forces of the vortex. 0. A vortex is simply Zp energy which has become intertwined with itself by mimicking the silence on a lesser order of magnitude. Thus, it is bound to itself in this specific form, which is the ideal field model, image 11. It has become a self-interacting feedback loop. 1. The formation of the initial vortex is aligned to a plane depending on the surrounding forces. Its alignment may be in constant violent fluctuation or quite even and stable, all dependent on its specific nature and the local environmental forces, both closely related, shown later. However, it tends towards organization and stability, as discussed in the following section. 2. These vortices interact with each other depending upon their texture, which is the 3D map of their surface generated by the frequency, amplitude, wavelength, etc. of their specific pattern of self-interaction, vibration.